The barren moon stretched endlessly under the pale glow of a distant star. Its surface was jagged and lifeless, scattered with rocks that seemed sharper than they should be. Elias moved carefully, his boots crunching on the alien dust, eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of life or danger. He had been sent with a small exploratory team to chart unclaimed systems, a routine mission in theory, but the universe had a way of reminding humans that nothing was ever simple. The wreckage appeared suddenly, almost as if the moon itself had exhaled it. A twisted metallic shell lay half buried in the rocky terrain, smoke curling from ruptured panels. Elias' pulse quickened. Reports had warned that the region might be patrolled by rogue factions, but nothing had prepared him for this. Something about the ship's design was elegant. Smooth, organic curves, almost alive with lights that blinked weakly like dying stars. He approached cautiously, checking for signs of life. There was a faint whirring sound, almost like a heartbeat. His training as a medic kicked in instinctively. He ducked under a collapsed section of the hull and froze. She was small, slender, but regal even in her injuries. Her skin was pale blue, almost translucent, veins faintly glowing under the surface. Her eyes, large and violet, fluttered weakly as she struggled to breathe. Blood streaked across her chest and arm, staining the intricate silvery markings that ran along her shoulders, signs of her rank, perhaps, though Elias did not know Silithar customs. "She's alive," he whispered to himself, kneeling beside her. Her breaths were shallow, and every movement sent fresh pain rippling across her body. "Come on, stay with me." Elias set down his medical kit, opening it to reveal the compact but versatile instruments he carried. Synthetic bandages, portable antiseptic, a small device that could monitor vitals and inject pain relief or stimulants. Humans were not the strongest species, but ingenuity and adaptability had always been their advantages. He worked quickly, careful not to jostle her more than necessary. "She's conscious," he murmured, noting her eyes tracking his movements. She flinched as he touched a raw edge of skin. "I'm going to help you, but you need to trust me." His voice was soft, almost gentle, because he had learned that force would only make her tense. The Silithar healer appeared suddenly, a tall figure emerging from the shadows of the wreckage. Her skin shimmered faintly in the low light, silver and pale like moonlight on water. Her presence was commanding, yet cautious. "Do not touch her like that," she hissed, voice low but cutting. "Your hands are far too gentle. You will harm her." "Gentle hands can save lives." He applied a makeshift splint to her shoulder, wrapped antiseptic around her cuts, and injected a small dose of pain relief. The Silithar healer watched silently, her arms folded, yet Elias sensed the tension in her posture. Hours passed like minutes as Elias worked. He adjusted bandages, monitored vitals, and improvised when equipment failed or supplies ran low. The princess occasionally murmured in her own language, sounds alien yet melodic. He did not understand her words, but her tone carried urgency and fear. Each time she opened her eyes, she studied him as though trying to decide whether he was friend or threat. At one point, the princess shifted slightly, wincing. "Careful," Elias whispered, steadying her. "I know it hurts." "I'm not going to let you die." The Silithar healer's sharp intake of breath indicated surprise. Even small reassurances seemed foreign to her. By nightfall, the smoke from the ship had faded, leaving a still, eerie silence over the moon. The princess's breathing had stabilized, and her eyes were less clouded with pain. Elias allowed himself a small sigh of relief. "You have done well," the Silithar healer said finally, her voice softer than before, though still cautious. "Your hands, they are unusual. Perhaps humans are not entirely without merit." After a long pause, she finally said, "Perhaps. But do not forget the galaxy is not kind. Gentleness may not be enough to survive." The next morning, Elias worked to extract the princess from the wreckage. The Silithar healer assisted reluctantly, offering advice but leaving the hands-on work to him. Moving her was delicate. Any sudden jolt could reopen wounds. He relied on careful planning, observation, and improvisation, qualities his species had honed for centuries. As they prepared to leave the moon, a distant hum resonated across the surface. Elias looked up to see several sleek ships descending toward them, their markings unfamiliar but menacing. Enemy forces. Their mission had not gone unnoticed. "Get her ready," Elias said to the healer. "We have to move fast." The enemy is relentless. Every step required careful balance, every movement cautious and deliberate. The enemy ships fired warning shots, exploding the surface rocks around them. Dust and debris filled the air, but Elias did not falter. He focused on the task at hand, protecting the fragile life in his arms. The healer, seeing his resolve, finally stepped forward to help navigate the dangerous terrain. They reached the shuttle just as the first missiles streaked past. Elias secured the princess inside, while the Silithar healer guided the launch sequence. The shuttle lifted off just as the enemy opened fire, weaving and dodging through the rocky canyons. Inside the shuttle, the princess finally spoke in a weak but clear voice. "You saved me." Her words were hesitant, unfamiliar to Elias' ears but heavy with meaning. "I will continue to save you," he replied. "That's my job." Perhaps humans were fragile in body, she seemed to acknowledge silently, but their resolve, their thinking, their courage, it was a strength all its own. As the shuttle soared into space, leaving the battered moon behind, Elias settled into his seat. The princess rested, her breathing steady. Outside the viewport, the stars stretched infinitely, cold and distant, yet filled with possibility. He did not know what awaited them in the galaxy beyond, but he knew one thing: humans, with all their gentle ways, would find a path where others might fail. And somewhere deep inside, he felt the silent acknowledgement of the Silithar healer's earlier words. Gentle hands could indeed wield a power beyond imagination. But survival, he realized, would demand more than just careful touch. It would demand courage, cunning, and the human ability to rise against impossible odds. The galaxy was watching, and the game had only just begun. The shuttle drifted silently through the void, a small vessel carrying two lives that mattered more than either of them realized. Elias monitored the princess's vitals carefully, noting the steady rise and fall of her chest. Kelara's skin glimmered faintly in the cabin lights, a fragile beauty that seemed almost otherworldly. The Silithar healer, Vela, sat nearby, her posture rigid, eyes constantly scanning instruments and monitors. "You are fortunate she did not die on that moon," Vela said quietly, her voice tinged with a hint of grudging respect. "Most humans would have panicked, dropped her, or made mistakes that cost her life. Panicking isn't part of the equation. I intend to show you that." "You humans are strange," she said, her accent delicate but precise. "Your hands, your touch, it is unlike anything my people have known." "You may have saved her body," she said, "but her mind is still vulnerable. Do not underestimate the enemies that pursue us. You will need more than gentle hands to protect her." Survival required intelligence, courage, and quick thinking. He had those traits in abundance, but he knew the galaxy could test even the strongest of wills. The shuttle's sensors beeped suddenly. A small fleet of unknown ships had picked up their trail, their movements calculated and deliberate. Elias' pulse quickened, but his hands remained steady. "Vela," he said calmly, "what do you know about them? Can we evade them?" "Humans adapt," he said. "We improvise, we survive. Perhaps it is what makes you different. Your species may be weak in body, but strong in spirit." "Kelara," he said gently, "I need you to stay still and let me handle this. Trust me." The enemy ships fired warning shots, streaks of light that tore through the darkness and exploded against asteroids around them. Elias navigated carefully, weaving the shuttle between rocks and craters, using the terrain to mask their trajectory. Vela's voice guided him, providing technical advice on the enemy's movements and weaknesses. Hours passed like minutes. The enemy fleet pursued relentlessly, yet Elias' ingenuity kept them just out of reach. At one point, he deployed small decoys, devices that emitted heat and radar signals to confuse the pursuers. The ploy worked, scattering part of the fleet and buying them precious time. In the quiet moments between maneuvers, Kelara whispered, "Your mind is different. Faster than most humans, but still, you think like a Silithar sometimes. Even you, human, must learn to think not just with your mind, but with strategy that matches strength." They survived through ingenuity, through the ability to adapt, and through refusing to give in when the odds were against them. The shuttle finally emerged from the asteroid field into open space, with the enemy fleet momentarily losing track of them. Elias allowed himself a small sigh of relief, though he remained vigilant. The battle was not over, the galaxy was vast, but dangers were never far behind. Kelara's breathing was steady now, her strength returning slowly thanks to his care. She looked at Elias, a mixture of gratitude and awe in her eyes. "You are not like the humans I have heard of," she said. "Your touch, it saved me, but your mind, it may save us all. Humans may be fragile, but we endure. That is how we survive, that is how we thrive. Sometimes it is measured in courage, in the ability to act when others hesitate." With careful planning, empathy, and ingenuity, they could survive almost anything. As the shuttle approached the system, Kelara turned her gaze to Elias. "I do not understand your people fully," she admitted, "but I feel hope. That hope is rare among my kind. Even when the stars themselves seem to be against us, we find a way forward. We adapt, we survive, and we protect those who cannot protect themselves." She realized that humans, though physically weaker than many species, had a unique combination of courage, ingenuity, and empathy that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Elias embodied that truth. The shuttle descended toward a hidden space station orbiting a small, neutral planet. It was a place where travelers could find shelter, information, and temporary safety. Elias prepared the shuttle for landing, ensuring Kelara was stable and secure. Once they docked, the doors opened, and the quiet hum of the station filled the cabin. Elias helped Kelara from the shuttle, supporting her carefully. The station was bustling with various species, traders, and travelers, yet Elias moved with purpose, focused on keeping the princess safe. They found a small medical bay, isolated from the public areas, where Kelara could recover without attracting attention. Elias worked quickly to stabilize her further, using both human and Silithar knowledge. Vela assisted silently, offering guidance only when necessary. Hours passed, and Kelara's strength returned incrementally. She looked at Elias with admiration, her voice soft but firm. "Your hands, your mind, both are extraordinary. Perhaps humans are more than my people believed. Your species may indeed be a force that cannot be ignored, but remember, the galaxy will test you, and sometimes even your gentle hands must make difficult choices." Elias watched her carefully, knowing that the galaxy's dangers were far from over. But for the first time in a long while, he felt a surge of hope, not just for survival, but for the possibility of changing the course of events in a galaxy that had long underestimated humans. The shuttle, the princess, and her healer had survived the first trial, but Elias knew this was only the beginning. The universe was vast, dangerous, and unpredictable. Yet humanity had a way of carving paths where none seemed possible, and Elias intended to prove it, one careful, courageous step at a time. The neutral system shimmered softly in the distance, its twin suns casting pale gold and silver streaks across the hull of the shuttle. Elias guided the vessel carefully through the sparse asteroid field that guarded the system's outer rim. Kelara sat beside him, wrapped in a light blanket, her breathing steady but her violet eyes still clouded with worry. Vela remained behind them, her gaze sharp and vigilant, as if she could see threats where none existed. Elias adjusted the controls, his mind already calculating possible routes, potential ambush points, and the unknown variables that awaited them. "We're not safe yet," he said quietly. "Enemy ships could be anywhere, waiting for us to make a mistake. Then we will not give them the chance. Humans survive by thinking differently, by seeing possibilities others miss. That is how we'll stay ahead." "Confidence is not arrogance," he replied. "It's knowing your limits and then finding ways to exceed them." But before they reached the station, the sensors blinked red. Multiple ships had emerged from behind the gas giant's clouds, intercepting their path. Elias' heart rate increased slightly, but his hands remained steady on the controls. "We have company," he said. "They're faster, more heavily armed, but not invincible. We can outthink them. Perhaps your species has merit, but you will need more than intuition to survive this." Each movement was calculated, exploiting weaknesses in the enemy formation. Despite the overwhelming odds, Elias refused to panic. Kelara watched him in awe. "Your mind, it is faster than anything I have seen," she said softly. "You anticipate, adjust. You are unlike any human I imagined." Humans survive because we think ahead, because we do not accept defeat as the only option. We improvise, we endure, and we protect those who cannot protect themselves. Strength is not always measured in weapons or armor. Sometimes it is measured in courage and intelligence. Kelara's hand brushed lightly against Elias' arm. "I do not understand why your people survive, but I see now. It is your mind that gives you power," she said. Elias gave a small nod. "And your people have their own strengths," he said. "But the galaxy underestimates humans because we are not always obvious. We rely on cunning, on resilience, on adaptability." Elias adjusted their course, using the gas giant's gravity to swing the shuttle into an unexpected trajectory. The sudden movement forced the enemy to recalculate, giving the shuttle a temporary advantage. Kelara's eyes widened as she watched. "You are, Unpredictable, she said. Even their technology cannot anticipate your mind. That is the human advantage, he said simply. We are not predictable, we adapt, we learn, and we survive. Strength is not just physical, he said. It is courage, ingenuity, and the will to protect others even when the odds are against you. The station was busy with travelers, merchants, and off-worlders, but Elia's focus was on securing safety and supplies. Inside a small medical bay, Elias tended to Kelara's injuries further. Vela assisted, offering guidance but allowing Elias to handle most of the work. Hours passed as he stabilized her, checked her vitals, and applied treatments that balanced Silithar physiology with human medical practice. Kelara finally spoke, her voice weak but clear. I did not expect humans to be so capable. Your hands, they heal, and your mind, it protects. Even when the odds are against us, we find a way forward. Sometimes it is in the mind, the courage, and the ability to act when others hesitate. This would be no different. Kelara rested, her breathing steady. Your people, perhaps we have misunderstood them, she said softly. You are more than fragile. Together, we can survive what others think impossible. Together, with thought, with courage, and with determination, humans do not surrender. That is what makes us strong. We hold on to it even when the stars themselves seem against us. We survive, we endure, and we protect those who cannot protect themselves. Elias had shown her that strength could take many forms. The shuttle, the princess, and her healer had survived yet another trial. But Elias knew that challenges lay ahead, political intrigue, enemies, and the unpredictable dangers of the universe. Humanity had a way of carving paths where none seemed possible, and Elias intended to prove it. As the station doors closed behind them, shielding them from the bustling crowds, Elias allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. Kelara was recovering, the healer was watching him with cautious respect, and for the first time since the attack on the moon, he felt a spark of hope that they could not only survive but change the course of events in a galaxy that had underestimated humans for far too long. The future was uncertain, the path dangerous, and the enemies relentless. But Elias, with his gentle hands and steadfast mind, knew one thing for certain. Humans could endure, and in the end, their courage and ingenuity might be the galaxy's greatest weapon. And with that knowledge, he prepared for the next step, knowing that the trials to come would test more than strength. They would test heart, mind, and the human spirit itself. The quiet of the neutral station was deceptive. Elias could feel it, a subtle tension in the hum of machinery, the low murmur of voices, the soft footsteps echoing in the corridors. Danger had not disappeared, it had merely shifted, waiting for the right moment to strike. Kelara had regained strength, but her recovery was fragile, and their enemies were relentless. Elias had learned early that human survival depended on awareness, foresight, and adaptability. Vela observed silently as Elias examined the station's sensors. Enemy scouts have located us, she said quietly. They will attempt to capture the princess. Time is short. But this mission would require more than careful planning. It would require ingenuity, courage, and the unpredictable advantage of human thinking. Kelara watched him, her violet eyes searching. Are you certain we can succeed? She asked, her voice soft but tinged with fear. Elias smiled faintly, resting a reassuring hand on hers. We will succeed, he said simply. Not because we are the strongest, but because we do not give up. We adapt, we think, and we endure. That is how humans survive, and how we protect those who cannot protect themselves. But this rescue will test every skill you possess. We will need a distraction, he said. Something that draws their attention away from our path. Can you assist? That is the human way. Use what you have, think creatively, and survive. And humans do not fail those who rely on them. Sensors blared occasionally, detecting movement, but Vela's manipulations created false signals, diverting attention from their true path. As they reached the edge of the station, Elias engaged the main thrusters, propelling the shuttle into open space. Outside, the enemy fleet closed in, expecting an easy capture. But Elias had anticipated this. He deployed a series of decoy drones, small, fast, and emitting heat signatures similar to the shuttle. The drones scattered the enemy formation, forcing them to divide their fire and attention. Kelara's eyes widened as she watched. Your mind, it is like a weapon, she said softly. You do not fight with force, but with thought. That is the human advantage, he said. We adapt, we improvise, and we survive. Sometimes it is in the mind, and the ability to act when others hesitate. Hours passed, tense and silent, broken only by the occasional warning beep of the shuttle's sensors. Kilara rested, her hand occasionally brushing against Ilia's arm, a small gesture of trust and connection. Vela remained vigilant, monitoring the enemy's movements and providing guidance when necessary. Finally, they emerged from the asteroid field near a hidden Silithar outpost. The outpost was small, lightly defended, but secure enough to provide temporary refuge. Ilias guided the shuttle to a discreet landing bay, touching down with careful precision. Inside the outpost, they found a secure room, isolated from the main areas. Ilias helped Kilara from the shuttle, supporting her carefully. Vela assisted silently, her eyes still alert for any signs of pursuit. Kilara looked at Ilias, her violet eyes filled with gratitude. "You saved me again," she said softly. "Your hands, your mind, both are extraordinary." "You are unusual," she admitted. "Your species relies not on strength, but on courage, intellect, and the ability to act when others falter. Perhaps humans are not as fragile as the galaxy believes." The enemy fleet would not give up easily, and their next move could strike at any moment. But he was ready. Humans thrived in adversity, and he had proven that ingenuity, courage, and determination could overcome even the most advanced threats. The outpost's communication system crackled to life, a secure channel opening to the Silithar allies waiting for the princess. Ilias listened carefully as plans were relayed, confirming safe routes, resources, and reinforcements. He coordinated with precision, ensuring Kilara's safety while preparing for the next phase of their mission. As night fell on the outpost, Ilias stood by the viewport, looking out at the distant stars. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, filled with threats and uncertainties. But humans had a way of carving paths where none seemed possible. He had proven that gentleness, courage, and ingenuity could be powerful weapons, and he would continue to use them to protect Kilara and ensure their survival. Kilara approached, her steps steady but careful. "I do not fully understand your people," she said softly, "but I feel hope. That hope is rare among my kind." Humans were unusual in the galaxy, fragile in body perhaps, but resilient, adaptable, and unexpectedly powerful through ingenuity and courage. Ilias embodied that truth. The next morning, they prepared to depart the outpost. The enemy fleet had not been idle, and Ilias knew their movements would be watched. He planned the route carefully, using both intelligence from the Silithar allies and his own calculations to avoid detection. Every decision was deliberate, every maneuver calculated to minimize risk and maximize safety. Kilara's hand brushed against his arm once more. "I trust you," she said softly. "Do not let them take me. That is my responsibility, and humans do not fail those who rely on them." Hours passed, tense and silent, broken only by the occasional beep of the shuttle's instruments. Kilara rested, her breathing steady, her strength returning. Vela remained vigilant, eyes scanning for any sign of pursuit. Finally, they emerged into open space, their path clear for the moment. Ilias allowed himself a brief moment of relief, though he remained alert. The galaxy was dangerous, and the enemy fleet would not give up easily, but he knew that humans could endure, adapt, and survive where others failed. Kilara looked at him, her violet eyes filled with gratitude. "Your hands, your mind, both have saved me," she said softly. "Perhaps humans are more than my people believed. And together, perhaps we can change the course of events in this galaxy. Together, we can survive what others think impossible." The shuttle continued its journey, carrying them toward their next challenge. Ilias knew the enemy would strike again, and the galaxy would test them further. But he also knew that humans had a unique strength, the ability to endure, adapt, and protect those who could not protect themselves. And with that knowledge, he prepared for what lay ahead, ready to face whatever dangers the universe would throw at them, confident in the power of human ingenuity and the courage of the human spirit. The enemy fortress hung in orbit around a desolate, toxic planet, dark and jagged against the cold void. Ilias studied it through the shuttle's viewport, his mind calculating every variable, every possible risk. Kilara sat beside him, her violet eyes steady despite the scars of her journey. Vela was tense, her posture rigid, but there was a faint glimmer of trust in her gaze. The time for planning was over. The time for action had come. Ilias took a deep breath, steadying himself. "We are not strong enough to face them head-on," he said quietly. "But humans have other strengths. Ingenuity, strategy, improvisation, that is how we survive, that is how we win. We have no choice but to try, and humans never give up. And sometimes, the smallest advantage can turn the tide. If detection occurs, we improvise. That is what humans do best. Elias guided it with careful precision, avoiding detection beams and automated turrets. Once inside, the fortress's corridors stretched like a maze, dark and foreboding. "Stay close," Elias whispered. "We cannot afford mistakes." The enemy had underestimated them, assuming humans would rely on brute force. Elias relied on something different: stealth, observation, and ingenuity. They reached the holding area where Kalara's captured ally, a Silithar commander, was confined. Guards patrolled the corridors, their weapons ready, their vigilance high. Elias studied them, noting patterns and routines. Then he acted, silently disabling alarms and creating diversions using minimal force but maximum cleverness. Kalara watched in awe as he moved. "Your mind, it is more powerful than any weapon," she whispered. Elias smiled faintly. "Strength comes in many forms," he replied. "Humans have learned that. Sometimes, a clever plan and careful timing are more powerful than a sword or a laser. That is how we survive." At others, he used shadows and structural features of the fortress to mask their movements. Vela's skepticism had faded completely. "I see now," she said quietly. "Humans are underestimated for a reason. Your ingenuity, your courage, it is unlike anything I have known. Stay alert, they will try to stop us." When the guards appeared, Elias used minimal force, exploiting their overconfidence and predictable tactics. He disarmed, redirected, and incapacitated them with efficiency, never relying on brute strength alone. The humans' ingenuity, timing, and courage turned the tide of the confrontation. Kalara and the commander followed closely, trust in Elias absolute. "Your hands, your mind, both are remarkable," Kalara whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Elias allowed a faint smile. "Gentle hands can be strong," he said. "Courage and thought make them stronger." The decoy drones he had prepared earlier drew enemy fire away, allowing them to escape relatively unscathed. Outside, in open space, the enemy fleet attempted pursuit. Elias analyzed their formation and movements, then executed a series of daring maneuvers. Using gravity from the nearby planet and the shuttle's agility, he outmaneuvered the enemy, forcing them to break formation and fire inefficiently. Vela watched, impressed despite herself. "Your species is remarkable," she said quietly. "You do not rely on force. You rely on thought, strategy, and the courage to act when others hesitate." "I do not fully understand humans," she said softly, "but I feel hope. Hope is rare in my world." Kalara and her allies were safe, though exhausted. Vela monitored the perimeter, ensuring no surprise attacks would occur. Kalara turned to Elias, her violet eyes reflecting both relief and admiration. "You have done what many thought impossible," she said softly. "Your hands, your mind, both have saved lives today. That is how we thrive, and that is how we protect those who cannot protect themselves. Humans possess all of these qualities. Together, we can survive what seems impossible." As night fell on the stronghold, Elias stood by a viewport, looking out at the vast expanse of stars. The galaxy was dangerous, filled with enemies, uncertainty, and treachery. But humans had a way of carving paths where none seemed possible. He had proven that courage, ingenuity, and compassion could be as powerful as any weapon. Kalara approached, her steps steady now. "I do not fully understand your people," she said softly, "but I feel hope. Hope is rare in my world." Humans were unusual in the galaxy, fragile in body, perhaps, but resilient, adaptable, and unexpectedly powerful through ingenuity and courage. Elias had proven that. The enemy fleet had been repelled, their fortress compromised, and Kalara was safe. The trials of the past weeks had tested every skill Elias possessed: ingenuity, courage, and unwavering determination. Humans had survived against overwhelming odds, not through brute force alone, but through thought, empathy, and adaptability. As the stars stretched infinitely around them, Elias knew one thing for certain: the galaxy would continue to challenge them. Danger would arise again. But humans, with their gentle hands, courageous hearts, and clever minds, could endure, adapt, and overcome. Kalara rested beside him, her violet eyes reflecting hope and trust. Vela stood watch, her respect for humans now unquestionable. And Elias, steady and resolute, understood that humanity's true strength was not just survival. It was the ability to change the course of events, protect those who could not protect themselves, and face the impossible with courage and ingenuity. The galaxy was vast, full of danger and unpredictable. Yet humanity had shown that strength could take many forms. Gentle hands could wield power beyond imagination. Courage could overcome fear. Ingenuity could defeat force. And in that knowledge, Elias found not just victory, but the promise of a future where humans, through heart, mind, and spirit, could shape the stars themselves. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, Elias allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Humanity had endured, Calera was safe, and the galaxy had seen what humans could accomplish when they refused to surrender. And that was only the beginning.